Political contributor Chris Uhlmann is here with me. Mixed bag, of course. The 9% or the 8.9% is going to be the headline everywhere. What do you make of these various increases?
Well, it was always going to be the case. And let's not forget, the government came to power on the promise of a $275 cut by 2025 on what were the prices then. And what have we seen since then? A 40% increase basically across the board on this particular set of rises for consumers, and nearly 50% or over 50%, I think, for businesses in that time. So it's precisely the opposite of what the government promised. And what we've seen in response is they're now recycling taxpayer money back into the pockets of consumers. So it's a bit like the arsonist claiming that they should be thanked for putting out the fire by throwing a pail of water on it. It is a preposterous position that the government holds, that electricity prices will ever come down, and that's intimated, by the way, in this report that we're seeing today, because the prices that went up last year are driving forward contract prices next year, which will continue to be the case as long as we continue to put wind and solar on the grid.
How much do we put store in the last days of the coalition? They, of course, delayed the announcement of an increase in power prices. Now, obviously, they've gone way up since then regardless. But how much of a longer-term trend is this in terms of the overall electricity?
It's
the transition is such a long period.
But there is no transition, Tom. There's an energy addition, essentially. What we're doing is we're building two power systems, right? We're doing the one that we're advertising, which is going to be dominantly wind and solar. But because that's off more often than it's on, it will rely on something to back it up. Now, that will be pumped hydro, that will be batteries, but mostly it'll be coal, which is what we're still doing and will continue to do, because every time one of those coal-fired power plants shuts down, the price of electricity will jump alarmingly, which is why the Victorian government is subsidising them secretly, has not disclosed the amount of taxpayers' money it's using to stay open. And New South Wales is also subsidising Eraring to stay open, because they know what will happen when those plants shut down. The only thing that's keeping the price of electricity down in Victoria at the moment is it's still using a lot of brown coal.
Which is the highest emitting source, of course. So that trend, it went from how early can we shut coal plants to a less sort of trumpeted, I suppose, extending of them. They do get less reliable though, don't they, the longer they are. You can refurb them or whatever, but the reliability does drop the longer they go. So it goes to planning again, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. But why don't we build some new ones? We export 6 times more coal than we actually burn. And if a tonne of carbon anywhere is a problem everywhere in global warming, then why aren't we burning some of it here? We could build cheap but better coal-fired power plants in Australia. Other parts of the world are doing it. China now burns 56% of the world's coal. You'll hear Chris Byron quite often talking about the amount of wind and solar on the grid. 60% of its electricity comes from coal-fired power. That's the truth of it. And China's not doing net zero, Russia's not doing net zero, the US is not doing net zero, India's not doing net zero. That is 60% of the world's emissions. So you could ask the question, what on earth is Australia doing?
What do you see, I mean, if we have a change of government, we still haven't found out exactly what the coalition plan is. So there's nuclear. That is clearly, that's not medium term, it's long term. And there's an indication they'll use more gas, but sort of where and how quickly. I guess that is the one source that can be added to the system more quickly than others.
Well, the government's plan is that there'll be 15 gigawatts of gas, which is enough gas to run 15 million homes through to 2050 and beyond. That's the government's plan, so there has to be gas in the system. And if we could get the cost of gas down, which would mean getting much more of it, then that would actually drive the cost of electricity down. But what are we doing? We're building liquefied natural gas import terminals in New South Wales and Victoria when there is gas under the feet of the premiers that run those states in New South Wales and Victoria, and we'll pay the import price. And guess what Victoria's going to do tomorrow? It's going to make the argument that the Commonwealth should underwrite those liquefied natural gas import terminals. Now, think about this.
It's higher emissions if you've got to ship it as well, apart from anything else.
Well, the short story is we've decided we're going to use gas, Tom. We've decided we're going to use, in fact, lots and lots of gas. We're just not going to use the gas under our feet, and we're going to pay for that privilege. I'm not kidding when I say a group of 6-year-olds with crayons could come up with a more coherent energy policy than the one that we're seeing. And you're dead right, by the way. There's nothing in the coalition's plan at the moment which would drive down the cost of electricity, and it will continue to march up, particularly with these network costs. Transmission and distribution will drive the price up if the wholesale price doesn't.
Yeah, that's the one part we're yet to see in terms of their plan, that the shorter and medium term. Chris Uhlmann, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tom.